is very futuristic. It's always been like that. Zaha was ahead of its time. I want to ask, how do you account for the changes that will happen throughout the life of the building? Because you don't only build for today's society, but it's also for tomorrow. So how do you take that into the architecture?
I start?
Yes.
Me?
This is the question of the future.
How do you take into account the lifespan of a building?
Yes,
The changes in society
Yeah,
and how
yeah,
that
yeah.
is reflected in the building, basically, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that, well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because you build for a present condition and a given brief. But also there is a lot of time which you can be informed by in the sense of how the city has evolved in that time, right? So I guess that every project is very different in that way, and in the way that it's capable, or how you are capable of designing a project that fits in with its surroundings and is taking on the values of the community into which you build it. And let's say that by being able to judge what those values of that community are, in the same way, if you manage to embed those values within the building that you design, hopefully it will reflect and maybe push forward that community's ambition and reflect those values for future, right? And I don't think that these values would change dramatically in a short time, right? So,
What do you think the values of Iaşi are? Like, what have you identified as being?
values of Iaşi.
Well, the people living in people, because Iaşi is made out of its people. So, what do you think, like, are, I don't know, some of our, like, core features, let's say?
I think the people in Iaşi is proud of their heritage, of the past. Obviously has been a capital for a certain time, and you can still see that that level, that monumentality in the city, and people is very proud of it. At the same time, they like innovation, technology. There is a big university, it's a young population, and I can see a lot of happening in terms of new place of work, new opportunities. And the third characteristic, I can see really like a Latin community. They enjoy life, being outdoor, being on green space. So I think the project, so I have a very positive feeling about how people here balance between innovation, tradition, and quality of life. And we want the project our proposal to respond to that and give an environment which is respectful but as well innovative, and where people can really enjoy and have a good quality of life.
Another question, I know you have projects all over the world, so is it different building in Eastern Europe as opposed to like Western? I will refer only to Europe because it's more...
I believe, designing in any place you design, there are obviously differences. It's not only, I understand you want to focus your question on a difference between East Europe and West Europe, but again, us as a practice, we truly work worldwide. And of course, any project that we approach has to necessarily start from understanding where we work, understanding the context. This is what we did in Iaşi, as we do anywhere else. So, it's difficult to answer your question in the specificity of it, trying to spot the difference between Eastern Europe and Western Europe, because I believe that, again, is that anywhere you go, you have differences from any other place. work designing in Iaşi it is clearly different than designing in Bucharest, for example. So it's architecture has by definition to be contextualized.
But have you found like our sort of communist past? How does that intervene? Because I know we focused a lot on the layer of like very old historical buildings that are in the center. But we also have this part that is part of our identity and who we are, and we cannot like ignore it and say it didn't happen. So how did you sort of, if this played any role in your research, maybe, or your and how do you think that this component shaped the image of Iaşi and what we expect of our cities now? And also in terms of public space.
Yeah, but every city has a past. Maybe here was the communist, somewhere else was, I don't know, other political extremists, and in the past you have invasion, and then you have war, and you have the Great Fire. I mean, how far back you go to understand the reality of a city? You have to account for all layers. So I don't think there's a specific response to the socialist past. It does depends on the, and if you see that, it's what, like number of years within a 2000 history. And then it's a period, as other period before. So obviously you have to see, maybe if you are adjacent to a building of that age, maybe you have to take in account that relation. Maybe if you're not in that context, it's not so relevant. So I think it's part of the complexity of a site, but let's say it's one part of it, and there are many of them. So it's not the main point, let's say.
Process. How do you come with that? Like, how do you generate that first spark, let's say, of idea that then gets, turned into something else? Like, what tools do you use? Like methods of working and all that.
Yeah. I think that it's never a first spark or one idea. It's actually that spark generates multiple ideas. At times hundreds of ideas which you put on the table, and then you have discussions and you analyze them.
It is truly a choral process. It's always that the result that you see is always the result of our teamwork. The starting point is always, as we were saying before, is always understanding where we work, understanding the place where we are designing. Then, as Bogdan just mentioned, we truly start maybe for a moment we become individual, and each one of us start thinking, and then we get together constantly, exchanging this idea, and it starts growing. It's truly an organic process. Also, in terms of the design process is truly an organic process. Really, there is no a receipt. You don't start step one, you do this, and then.
Well, it's a creative process.
It is.
In the sense that there is a moment in one individual come up with one idea. Many individuals in a team, they come up with different ideas. The difference between creative process and a fantasy is that creative is something which is new, but it has to work within a certain frame. And the fantasy is just something you say, and it may be impossible to do. So if we restrict in the creative process, it's a collective in the sense that there are many individual voices. And that comes from the individual. There is not other recipe. If you have good designer, good people, you will get good ideas.
And I think just to tap on the tools that we use, I don't think, because like many people don't, like in smaller practices, you would imagine that the big offices use tools which are not available or that are super specific and so on. But I think we use very accessible tools to everybody else. But I think that the power of the dialogue is the most important, because you use all the newest digital tools which are at everyone's disposal at the end of the day, right? Because we're not able to develop those tools ourselves. I mean, we tweak them, some of them, and do little things here and there which can help the process and help your individual view of how architecture should be done and so on. But that's just to make your life easier and to accelerate the process. But at the end of the day, it's the same tools that everybody uses. But I actually think that that power of sitting down together and the dialogue of so many different individual people coming together in a small community makes the difference of you being able to refine the product at the end of the day.
Cool. And now one last fun question. You walked around Iași, right? What was your favorite building or your favorite public space? And you can say something that's more obscure. It doesn't even have to be an historical landmark.
Buildings for me, the Tridiani Monastery, I was shocked, truly shocked by that building. It's amazing. It is amazing.
You also have monasteries on top of hills.
Yeah.
I still didn't manage to see them. If I will have the chance, I may change my idea. For the time being, I was too impressed by that.
Well, I'm still impressed by the palace here because I think it's monumentality and a scale which is really unexpected. So it's a true surprise, and it's not been seen in. I've traveled very much in many places, but rarely comes something which comes as a surprise and unexpected as this one.
Yes, for me, it's simple. I think I like very much SHAREarch, the monastery's facade especially. I mean, it's the typology of the church, or of the monastery, but of the church, is quite common in Romania. I'm Romanian myself, so the typology of the building is quite common. But the particularity of it, I think, is the craftsmanship and workmanship that the facade shows, and that's just stunning, and it's amazing. And the first time that I came in Iași, some 10 years ago, just walking by on the pedestrian street, I was completely, mesmerized by this facade, which just opens up unexpectedly to the side of it.